Progress requires correction. But here's where people get stuck. They take action, get a little confidence, and then they stop refining. So instead of the loop continuing, it stalls. And what you get in this, action without evolution. You're doing, but you're not becoming. And that's where the plateau shows up, what I was talking about. Not because you stopped working, but because you stopped adjusting. And here's something I want you to hold on to. Progress requires correction. Nothing is being corrected. Nothing is truly progressing. Hello, welcome to the Shattered Mindset Podcast, wisdom from life's turning points and defining moments. I'm your host, Melvin Larry. I want to talk to you about something that can be frustrating because you're putting in the work, you're showing up, you're doing what you said you were going to do, but the results, they're not matching the effort. And if you've ever found yourself sitting there thinking, I know I'm doing something, so why am I not getting where I thought I'd be? That question right there, that's what we're going to really talk about, to unpack here today. Because here's what I've learned, and I want you to really hear this. Effort can feel like progress, even when it's not producing it. And that's where things get confusing, because when you're not doing anything, it's obvious. But when you're busy, when you're active, when you're engaged, it feels like you're moving forward, and sometimes you're actually not. Now, let's slow this down for just a moment. I don't want you thinking about what you plan to do. I don't want you thinking about what you said you were going to start. I want you to think about this. What are you actually doing consistently? Not occasionally, not when you feel like it, not when everything lines up. What are you actually doing over and over again on purpose? Here's the truth. Your life is not shaped by your intentions. It's shaped by your repetitions. If the results aren't showing up the way you expected, we don't need to guess. We need to look at the pattern. Now, let me walk you into this a little deeper, because one of the biggest misunderstandings out there is the belief that consistency automatically leads to results. And I understand why people believe that, because consistency is powerful. It builds habits, it builds discipline, it builds momentum. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Consistency only works when it's pointed in the right direction. Let that sit for a moment. And you actually see this play out all the time. People can be doing well, getting results, moving forward, and then they reach a point where what got them there doesn't work the same way anymore. Not because they stopped working, but because what's required at that level is different. And you hear it said in different ways. What got you here won't get you there. And that's not just a phrase, that's a reality a lot of people run into. You can be consistent and still be off. You can show up every day and still not be moving forward. You can put in hours and still not be getting closer to what you actually want. Feel like you're running on a treadmill. And that's where frustration begins, because now you're doing everything you thought you were supposed to do, and it's not paying off the way you expected. You see, sometimes we assume that effort is the answer, so we double down. We push harder, we stay longer, we add more. But if the direction is off, more effort doesn't fix it. It just reinforces it. Let me say that again. More effort on the wrong path doesn't create progress. It creates deeper frustration. Now, let me bring this down to real life, okay? There have been times where I was working hard. Putting in the time, showing up consistently, doing what I believed needed to be done. And from the outside, it probably looked like progress. Sometimes it actually really did. But internally, something didn't feel right because the results weren't lining up with my efforts. And I had to stop and ask myself, not am I working hard, but is what I'm doing actually working? That's a different question because one focuses on effort, the other focuses on effectiveness. And that's where the shift begins. Now let's take this another step further because this is where it can get a little tricky. Sometimes you're not doing the wrong thing, you're just repeating it without awareness. And that right there, that's where people get stuck for a long time because you're in motion, you're active, you're engaged, but you're not evaluating. You're not stepping back and asking, what is this producing? So you stay busy, but you don't adjust. Listen, sometimes we talk about plan, do, review, but sometimes we're just plan, do reporting. I've said this before, and not actually reviewing. Okay? And you keep moving, but you don't refine. And here's the truth. Action without awareness can keep you stuck longer than inaction. Because at least with inaction, you know something needs to change. But with blind action, you convince yourself you're already doing what needs to be done. Let me slow that down with something practical. Think about someone going to the gym. They're consistent, they show up, they're putting in the time, but they're doing the same routine, the same weight, the same pace week after week. Look, I used to go to the gym and there was this guy, he would take a weight and it wasn't too much weight, but he would go and he would lay back on the bench and he would go and pump it real fast, like 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then he would sit it down and he would jump up and go, man, he would roll his shoulders around. He's really done something, man, and then I would see him out in the neighborhood, quote unquote, running. And, it was kind of one of those running where you kind of pick up one hill, put it down, pick up another hill, put it down. His feet never actually left the ground. All right. Now, people do different things and they feel good because they're consistently doing what they do. But after a while, the results stop changing, if they ever did. Why? Because nothing is being adjusted. The body adapted, but the behavior didn't. Sometimes you're working out and you can they call it, petering out or maxing out on whatever, and you have to change. Your body has to shift, And the same thing happens in life. If you're not adjusting, you're eventually just maintaining. And sometimes you're maintaining something you don't even want. Now, let me bring something in here that I've talked about before, because this ties directly into it. This is something I call the confidence action clarity loop. I call it that. And I'll go deeper into this another time, but just understand this. You take action, that action builds confidence, that confidence gives you clarity, and that clarity helps you take better action. But here's where people get stuck. They take action, get a little confidence, and then they stop refining. So instead of the loop continuing, it stalls. And what you get in this, action without evolution. You're doing, but you're not becoming. And that's where the plateau shows up, what I was talking about. Not because you stopped working, but because you stopped adjusting. And here's something I want you to hold on to. Progress requires correction. If nothing is being corrected, nothing is truly progressing. Now, let's go a little bit deeper, because sometimes the real issue isn't your effort, it's your direction. And look, I'll tell you, this part right here, this is where it can get uncomfortable, because effort feels good. Effort gives you something to point to. Effort allows you to say, I'm doing my part. But direction requires you to pause, to reflect. Stop and take a look at the map, all right, or whatever, okay, to be honest, and sometimes to admit that what you've been doing isn't producing what you thought it would. That's not easy, but it's necessary because here's the truth. You don't get rewarded for effort, you get rewarded for alignment. Now, let me give you a picture of this. If you get in your car and you drove for hours, but you were headed in the wrong direction, would going faster help? No, it would just take you further away. And that's what's happening for a lot of people. They're accelerating without confirming direction. They're moving without checking alignment. And because they're moving, it feels like progress, but it's not taking them where they actually want to go. Now, here's where we shift this into something you can actually use, because I don't want you leaving this conversation thinking, well, that sounds good. I want you thinking, I can do something with that. I want you to take a moment and look at the last 30 days. Not what you intended, not what you planned, what you actually did. I want you to walk through this with me. First question, what did this produce? Not what you hoped it would produce, what did it actually produce? Second, what did it reinforce? Because everything you repeat reinforces something. Did it reinforce growth or did it reinforce comfort? Did it push you forward or did it keep you familiar? Third question, where is this leading? If you keep doing exactly what you've been doing, where does that path end up? And don't answer that too quickly, okay? Because the answer to that question, that's where clarity begins. Because once you see it, you have a choice. You can keep repeating it or you can adjust it. And that adjustment, that's where progress lives. I remember a time when I had to make that kind of adjustment. Not just a time, a few times, okay? I was doing what I believed needed to be done, showing up, putting in the effort. But when I stepped back and really looked at it, I realized something. I wasn't lacking effort, I was lacking alignment. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. So I had a decision to make. Do I keep doing what feels productive or do I change what's actually producing results? And that's not always comfortable, okay? Because changing direction means letting go of what you've been doing, what feels good, what you're used to, all right? All right? Even if you've invested time in it, even if you've gotten good at it, even if it feels familiar. But here's the thing. Holding on to the wrong pattern will cost you more than letting it go. Now, let me bring this back around, okay? If you've been doing the work and not seeing the results, that doesn't mean you're failing. It means there's something you haven't seen yet or recognized. And once you see it, everything can shift. Sometimes not just even seeing it, sometimes accepting it, all right? You might see it, but not accept it, all right? Okay? But have you been willing to look, okay? And you just have to be willing to do that, to evaluate, to adjust. Because hard work will take you far, but aligned work, that's what takes you where you actually want to go. So as you move forward, don't just ask yourself, am I working hard? Okay? That's not enough. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing working? Because that question right there, that's where clarity begins. And clarity, that's what changes everything. Look, I'm going to go now, but until the next time, I want you to really get clear, get focused, make sure you're getting aligned, and make sure what you're wanting to do is aligned with what you're doing. Where you're wanting to go is aligned with your activity. That's called congruence. So until the next time, keep adapting, keep evolving, and keep reaching for those new and higher horizons. I'll see you the next time on the Shattered Mindset Podcast. Take care. Take charge. God bless.